You're watching Carlton, coming up at 10:30 this morning with Fern Britton and Nick Knowles. Till then, we've news and comment on the election results.
Good morning and welcome back to election 2001. William Hague has said he'll step down as leader of the Conservative Party following Tony Blair's historic election victory. Labour won with another unprecedented landslide majority, slightly smaller than in 1997, but it still meant catastrophe for the Conservatives. William Hague made his announcement outside Conservative Party headquarters. He said he'll stay on until a successor can be chosen.
I believe it's vital that the party be given the chance to choose a leader who can build on my work, but also take new initiatives and hopefully command a larger personal following in the country. And I've therefore decided to step down as leader of the Conservative Party when a successor can be elected in the coming months. I will continue until that time to carry out the parliamentary and other duties of the leader of the opposition.
For the winner, of course, the spoils. And Tony Blair is already back in Downing Street, and we expect to hear about his cabinet reshuffle before the morning's out. He is now the first Labour leader in history to have the chance to serve 2 full terms in office. Before he returned to Downing Street, he stopped off at Labour Party headquarters in central London, where he was cheered by his party workers celebrating an astonishing achievement. And it was also a good night for Charles Kennedy and the Liberal Democrats. He arrived back from their headquarters in London a short time ago after flying down from his constituency in Scotland. Plenty to celebrate for them. They're expected to have more MPs than ever before, and it was a powerful endorsement of their new leader. John Sargent, the big issue, the decision of William Hague to stand down. What do you make of it?
I think this will come as an enormous shock to senior Conservatives to fight a campaign throughout this period and then to see the brutality of all this. It is like an American presidential candidate. It's not worked with the public, and therefore I fall on my sword. As for what happens now, it will be quite a long period. Tory MPs will have to decide on 2 candidates to go forward. One of them is almost certainly going to be Michael Portello. Who will be the other, we don't know. But this is going to be a divisive period for the Conservative Party, and it will be a long time now before they can be in any position to recover.
John, thank you. And now to see how the House of Commons is going to be in this new Parliament, Dermot is in the House of Commons, his virtual House of Commons. Dermot Murnaghan.
Yes, Jonathan, empty at the moment, of course, but soon this House will be teeming with new MPs elected and re-elected, and first amongst equals will be the Prime Minister, Tony Blair. He'll be sitting there. Now, 659 MPs elected yesterday. Let's allocate them to their parties. This side, the government side of the House, that'll be Labour. They will have 413 MPs. The Conservatives, under William Hague for the time being, they'll have 166. And the Liberal Democrats, Charles Kennedy's team, had a good night last night. Of course, they'll have 52 MPs under their flag. And the others, the parties from Northern Ireland, counts going on there, 18 of them, and the Nationalists from Scotland and Wales, and 1 independent, there'll be 28 of them. What about the majority? Let's have a look at that. 413 MPs translates into a majority for Tony Blair of 167. Jonathan.
Dermot, thank you. And now Lauren Taylor is at Conservative Party headquarters. Lauren, I guess there must be shell shock there this morning.
I think they were very surprised, especially as Mr Hague had been so buoyant throughout, and because senior Tories had been hinting in the last few days that they thought it was likely he would stay on. Now, Mr Hague made it clear that he had listened to those voices urging him to stay on, but he clearly made the decision that he reckons the 2 months or so that it will take to elect a new leader will be enough for the party to regroup, but he's made it clear that he's no intention of staying in frontline politics now. It's back to the backbenches for him.
Lauren, thank you. And now coming up next, the analysis of all the election news in your area. But join us again at 10 o'clock when we'll be talking, amongst other things, to Lord Tevitt and Michael Heseltine, senior Tories respectively on the right and the left, about what their party should do next. Also, what will a second Labour government mean to you? Join us again very soon at 10 o'clock.
This is Carlton in an hour this morning with Fern Britton and Nick Knowles. Now, with the latest news in London today, here's Alistair Stewart.
London decides Labour keep control in the capital, The Conservatives score success in Essex but lose their leader. The Liberal Democrats celebrate one major victory and strengthen their position across the region. Welcome to our London Today election special. Good morning. The votes have been counted, Londoners have had their say, and in the main they've followed the national pattern, helping Labour to an overwhelming victory and a second term in power. The scale of that victory has already forced William Hague to resign as Conservative Party leader.
I believe it's vital that the party be given the chance to choose a leader who can build on my work, but also take new initiatives and hopefully command a larger personal following in the country. And I've therefore decided to step down as leader of the Conservative Party when a successor can be elected in the coming months.
William Hague speaking just about an hour ago. Speculation growing, of course, about who'll take over. Michael Portillo, the Kensington and Chelsea MP, and Ian Duncan Smith in Chingford, already being talked about. Here in the southeast, the other big stories are three major turnarounds by the Tories. Essex man and Essex woman helping the Conservatives win at Romford, Upminster and Castle Point. A good night for the Lib Dems, taking Guildford, but only after 2 recounts, and increasing majorities in their existing seats in London. In the next 30 minutes, we'll bring you all the results, all the reaction, all the news that affects you from the election. I'll also be gauging the views of our resident expert, Jessica Elgood, from the Political Research Unit of polling company Mori, who'll help put the results into context. First, though, a roundup of some of the main events from election 2001 in our region. Political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Andrew Richard Rosendale has been duly elected to serve as a Member of Parliament for the Romford constituency.
In a truly terrible night for the Tories, this was the moment their hopes were briefly raised. It wasn't to last. But Andrew Rosendale's victory was meagre compensation. Romford was Labour's most marginal seat in Greater London, although out here they regard themselves as Essex, and this as the spiritual home of Thatcherism.
I did work for it. You know, we spent every last second running around the constituency and making sure that the vote was coming out.
In neighbouring Upminster, Angela Watkinson suggested the Tory revival in Essex might not be a fluke. This was another rare Labour marginal to fall, as was Castle Point, the constituency covering Canvey Island.
It is a great privilege and an honour to represent Castle Point, because Castle Point is quite simply the very best constituency in the country.
During the election, William Hague campaigned in just 2 London constituencies, yet the Tories had set their sights on recapturing at least 25 Greater London seats. In the end, the 2 they did win, Upminster and Romford, weren't even visited by the leader. It didn't take him long to decide the game was up.
I believe strongly, passionately in everything that I've fought for. But it's also vital for leaders to listen and parties to change. I believe it's vital that the party be given the chance to choose a leader who can build on my work, but also take new initiatives and hopefully command a larger personal following in the country.
If the Conservatives were to win any constituency in London, it should have been Kingston and Surbiton. The Lib Dem majority of 56 was the smallest of any in the capital. But the sitting MP, Ed Davey, not only saw off the Tory challenge, he emerged with a safe seat, thanks in part to tactical voting.
I think it was majority 15,700, but I haven't exactly had time to work out the figures. But I think you can say it's a sizable majority this time.
The Lib Dems have consolidated their power base in southwest London and Surrey. Commuters in true blue Tory Guildford also have a Liberal Democrat MP from today.
Bloody hell. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I'm very pleased. I think it's good.
I hereby announce that Stephen Twigg is duly elected as MP for Enfield South.
The man of the moment from the last election was also home and dry, further evidence of the Tories' failure to grab the key marginals. But the man beaten by Stephen Twigg last time at least had a better night, although Michael Portillo's victory in Kensington and Chelsea was hardly a surprise. This is a man who's got some serious thinking to do now. The job he once would have given everything for is suddenly vacant. But even the most ambitious Tory will be wondering who in their right mind would want to be leader just now. At Conservative's central office, this is Simon Harris for London Today.
OK, let's have a look in detail at what's actually happened overnight. Nationally, Labour have an historic victory, a landslide, and are heading for a majority of 167. That's slightly down on the 1997 result, but still huge. Now, how your vote has affected the political situation here in London. This was the political map of the capital before the polls closed last night. 74 seats, as you can see, 57 of them Labour, 11 of them Conservative, and 6 Liberal Democrats. And this is how the map looks this morning. Labour has lost 2 seats and now have 55. Both of those seats, Romford and Upminster, went to the Conservatives, and they're now up to 13. The Liberal Democrats remain unchanged on 6 seats. Now, let's have a look at the rest of the South East, because outside London the picture is quite different. Here, 48 seats up for grabs before the big vote. 32 Conservative, 16 Labour, none held by the Liberal Democrats. And this is how the map looks right now. Labour lost 1 seat and now have 15. The Tories have gained 1 and lost 1, so remain on 32 seats. And the Liberal Democrats have gained 1 seat, and that is their first in the neck of the woods. There it is down in the left-hand corner, and it is, of course, Guildford. Now, Jessica Elgood, who I introduced a little earlier on, is from Moray. First of all, your overall take on what's happened in the capital and in that area out there in the home counties.
Broadly very much the same as the nation as a whole, but whereas the nation swung from Labour to Conservative with a swing of 1.8, a very small swing, not going to make a difference to the overall picture as we have seen. In London, the South East, the swing was only 0.7, so we have stayed where we were in 97 more than the rest of the country as a whole.
Because the really big, dramatic damage was done way back in 97, and pretty well it's remained much the same.
Absolutely, opinion hasn't changed.
Everybody is talking already about voter apathy. Of course, it's entirely up to people whether they vote or not, but they didn't.
But they didn't. In London particularly, the national figure is 59%. In London, it's down to 55%, but there's a difference with the South East. 61% of those people turned out to vote. OK. What about the Greens and the UK Independence Party? None of them won, but how did they fare? Greens fared relatively well compared to their historical position. In some seats, they got up to 5% of the vote. UKIP, United Kingdom Independence Party, fared poorly in many seats, losing their deposits. OK, Jessica, for the time being, thank you very much indeed. Now, we're going to talk live to one of the big winners of the night. We're going to Guildford in Surrey, where the Liberal Democrats made their one real gain of the night. They overturned a Tory majority of more than 4,500, and Sue Doughty won by the narrow margin of 450 votes. I'm delighted to say that she's here now. 2 recounts. Have you got any fingernails left?
Not one, not one.
What was it like? Tell us how the emotions.
It was incredibly difficult because we worked so hard, so all the adrenaline was going. And I just didn't want to think about the result. I'd known for the last few days it was going to be really, really close. And I was dreading recounts because of my nerves. I think the first time we thought, yes, that's fine. The second time we thought, well, this is a bit worrying. And the third time, I think I was just best kept out of the room. I wasn't fit to be with at all.
Oh, I'll bet. All right, 2 points here, Sue. First of all, you are now the popular Member of Parliament for Guildford. What are your key priorities for the good folk of Guildford who've given you this new job?
There's 2 or 3 things. One is we are threatened with a massive incinerator, which we think is quite the wrong thing. And we must continue the fight to oppose the incinerator. That was an early pledge I made to people that if I was elected I would do. And the other thing is, we are underfunded with our hospital services here. We do have people on trolley weights, there's bed blocking, lots of problems with our old people go if they've had a hospital stay and need onward nursing. We've had some recent funding for that, but really one of the things I want to make sure is that this becomes a thing of the past on a permanent basis. OK, so that's the local agenda, as it were, but your boss, Charles Kennedy, made it very clear throughout the campaign, and Simon Hughes here in London as well, we'll be talking to him in a moment, made it pretty clear too. You now consider yourself as a political party to be the real and effective opposition because the Tories are in such trouble. What role do you hope to play in that, Sue? I think a different one to previous opposition types. I think we're moving away from the big confrontation in politics. It hasn't worked. Shouting at Tony Blair gives you a fairly rubbish answer on the whole. So I think it's a case of saying, well, let's not fight over things where we have common cause. but where things aren't good enough, we just really must be working to say, not only I don't like this, but how can we solve it, which is a very different way of working from confrontational politics.
Indeed so. Well, thank you for finding time for us this morning. Go and have a rest. The work starts a little bit later on. Sue Dowdy, congratulations and thanks again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Very happy lady down there, Sue Dowdy in Guildford. She becomes, however, a member of a fairly select club as a South East female MP. Two of the more established have retained their seats. The former Social Security Secretary Harriet Harman held Camberwell and Peckham with a majority of just over 14,000. That's almost 2,000 down on her margin of victory in 1997. Her constituency has the highest number of council houses in London, and the turnout there was very low, just under 47%. A little way down the road, Labour's Minister for Women, well, at the moment, who knows what will happen to her later on, Tessa Jowell, held on in Dulwich and West Norwood with a 12,000 majority, down more than 4,000 on the last election. OK, let's go over now to political correspondent Simon Harris, who's in Downing Street now. Simon, the results confirm Labour's supremacy countrywide, don't they, really?
Oh, very much so, and they're also talking about the London effect as far as the Tory party is concerned. Now, however unpopular the Tory party is in the rest of the country, it is perceived to be even more unpopular here in London.
Hague's departure. Runners and riders, here in London, we're well represented, aren't we?
Well, certainly two favourites. Michael Portillo is the bookies' favourite, but as we know, he's been giving some confusing signals in recent months about whether he's really interested, partly, I suppose, as a show of loyalty to Mr Hague, but one must suspect that he's going to throw his hat in the ring. The other is the Woodford and Chingford Green MP Ian Duncan Smith, the Shadow Defence spokesman, and thought to be the darling of the right and certainly Margaret Thatcher's favourite for the job.
Watch it with great interest, Simon. Talk to you a bit later on. Thank you very much indeed. In an election that's sprung few shocks, little surprise that Simon Hughes held on to Southwark and North Bermondsey for the Lib Dems and increased his majority considerably. He won 57% of the vote and now has a majority of more than 9,500 on the seat that he won in 1983. And a very happy Simon Hughes joins us in the studio, along with the Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, Steve Norris. Welcome to both of you, and good morning. Simon, first of all, they did target you. Labour were gunning for you at one stage, so you're not only happy but relieved.
Relieved and very happy. I think we got a better share of the vote than the famous Bermondsey by-election, which sent us all home smiling. And the good thing for us was that it was a campaign where we thought we might pick up, but it was against Labour. The reality is the Tories are always, as Steve knows well, the third player. So it wasn't the normal fight that's been going on in the capital, and we were determined to hold it. I think we may have seen them off, and I think we may be well on the way to next year taking control of the London Borough of Southwark.
And as far as we're talking to Sue Dowdy just a moment ago, I mean, that is the other big news for you, because you hadn't had a seat out in that hinterland around London for some time. A significant shift of opinion out there?
Well, breaking through in Surrey is certainly good news. We'd hoped to break through in Kent, let's be honest about it. We hoped to win Orpington, or if not Orpington, then possibly Folkestone and Hythe. We didn't quite. We missed Orpington by, I think, 230 votes. We were sad about that, but Guildford, certainly. I mean, you know, the Surrey county town, well, I've been told off in saying Kingston, I think, is the Surrey county town, but the other Surrey county town is certainly a real coup, and it means that, and that's good politics, it means that no county is sacred. That's right, and it should be.
Steve, how do you resurrect the corpse of the Conservative Party?
I wish I knew. That's the first thing. I mean, this has been a very bad night for us. You said there were no shocks. There were. The shock is that after 4 years, a government with a huge majority remains a government with effectively exactly that same majority. And you know, there was, I think, real cause for concern in our party that we hadn't been able to shift people over the last 4 years, really one iota toward us, that we were still a party that people actually felt they had to vote tactically to keep out, which I know Simon will agree with me,
here's an interesting thought
with the Liberals.
Leon Britton was talking a little bit earlier on, and he said it was because we were completely wrong on the euro, on the single currency, and yet there you've got Andrew Rossendale out in Romford, who says, I am a never-to-the-pound man, and the good people of Essex said, we'll have him.
Yes, exactly, and it shows how dangerous it is to imagine that there's one single reason why the party lost. I mean, I personally believe that as a party we simply were an unattractive proposition to too many people. We were an angry party rather than a warm and approachable party. We were exclusive rather than inclusive. We showed signs of intolerance rather than tolerance, and frankly in a city where 1 in 4 comes from an ethnic minority background, that's not good enough. Now, you know, I thought William Hague showed that extraordinary personal quality that he has in saying, well, you know, they don't like me, they don't like what I was saying, I'm going. That's fine. It gives us an opportunity now to think very carefully across a whole range of issues. Jessica, for what it's worth, I don't think that the euro was actually the significant issue.
You were nodding during that. Which bit of it did you agree with?
I agreed with all of it, I'm afraid to say. Firstly, it's about the way they're presenting themselves, being inclusive. Steve is absolutely right. It's actually appearing modern, actually understanding what people's lives are about. So. They're all more tolerant of alternative lifestyles. Secondly, it's not a single issue. People don't vote in general elections on single issues. It's about presenting a whole package of issues, and during the campaign, the Conservatives actually just dodged public services.
OK, Simon, can they resurrect themselves? I mean, they are a party historically that wins elections. This will be the longest period they've been out of power since after the First World War.
I think it's at least possible. I'm not going to make exaggerated claims, but at least possible that we don't have any guaranteed place in the top 2 order for the Tory party, just as Labour aren't guaranteed to be in government all the time. The reality is with 3-party politics, that I hope sees us going up. I mean, the history of last night is that we're moving forward. We're the only party moving forward, and it does give us a great opportunity. If the Tories don't sort themselves out, they could be in permanent or at least terminal trouble.
A full stop, but only for now, because you've kindly agreed to stay with us, and we'll be talking to you again a little bit later on in the programme. After the break, in addition to that, we'll have more results, more reaction and more analysis. All of the big stories from election 2001 here in London and the South East, so stay tuned.
Accidents do happen, but then I've been hit by a direct line driver, which means I avoid all the usual hassle. They repair both cars and deliver them to the door. And I'm not even with Direct Line. Well, not at the moment, anyway. Call or buy online.
With 5 different flavours in every box of Skittles mints, you get a new sensation in every mouthful. Cool mint, spearmint, sweet mint, toffee mint, peppermint. New Skittles mints. Taste the rainbow.
Wherever you are, get involved in a Mills & Boon romance. You'll be surprised where it can take you. Now for a limited time, only £1.99 while stocks last. Mills & Boon.
Hello again and welcome back to our London Today election special. The capital's voters have helped to elect Tony Blair and his Labour Party to a second term in government. It went as the polls largely had predicted. Labour's majority expected to be 167, a slight decrease on 97, but still whopping. The result has cost William Hague his job. He stood down this morning saying, no man is more important than the party. Here in London, Labour didn't quite have it all their own way. The Lib Dems took Guildford and did well in existing seats. The Conservatives did take 3 seats from Labour in Essex. Live now to the scene of one of those Tory Essex successes. In 1997, Labour took Romford with a very tight majority of 649. It was high on the Tory target list of seats to win back, and as we've seen and heard, they did it. Andrew Rossingdale, who's giggling there in the monitor already, took a majority of close to 6,000. The new Member of Parliament for Romford joins me now. Warmest congratulations to you. You are a happy bunny this morning, aren't you?
Yes, it was a wonderful result. I'm delighted to be elected the MP for Romford, and I'm very honoured. It's a fantastic opportunity for me, and I will work hard and serve well the people of Romford.
One of your first tough decisions is who you're going to back as the leader of your party, because at the moment you haven't got one.
That's a matter that I'll think about in the next few days. Obviously,
you stood up there very sharply on I am a never-to-the-pound man, so we know a little bit about where you're coming from already, don't we?
Yes, I just believe we have to be consistent. One of the major issues in this election here in Romford was Europe. People do not want to go into the euro. People want to keep their independence. They don't want to be governed by Brussels. William Hague was right. Where we went slightly wrong is that we weren't consistent. We talked about a short-term period in holding that policy. What we need is a long-term, clear, principled policy as to where we stand in Europe.
Sure.
Free trade, yes, but government from Brussels, no.
Sure. Steve Norris was just saying in an earlier conversation with me here that what people in London also wanted to hear a lot more of and just didn't hear enough of was about the social agenda, the issue of race, living together in this multicultural society that we are in London and Essex and the rest of it. We didn't hear enough of that from people like you, but you won.
It's simply not an issue over here. I don't think that anybody regards this as a problem. It doesn't matter what ethnic background somebody comes from. I received votes yesterday from people of all ethnic backgrounds, people that wanted to vote for me because I was a Conservative, and that's all that matters. People who vote Conservative because they believe in our values, not because they're of a particular ethnic background. I think this is a bogus argument, and I'm not going to be drawn into it.
All right, well, thank you for joining us this morning, and again, warmest congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Still in Essex, and the Conservatives managed to hold off a pretty fierce challenge in Brentwood and Ongar. For a time it seemed as though the man in the white suit, former TV reporter Martin Bell, might oust Eric Pickles. He didn't, but he did cut Mr Pickles' majority by 7,000 to just under 3,000 votes.
We came from nowhere in 3.5 weeks, no party, and we reduced Mr Pickles' majority from 10,000 to less than 3,000. I think that's a pretty remarkable achievement.
When you wake up in the middle of the night and you say, what happens if tactical voting really happens in a big way? At least I know. And the answer is I survive.
Very happy Eric Pickles there, grinning. Well, the Conservative Vice-Chairman Steve Norris is still with us, as is the Liberal Democrat Simon Hughes. And I'm delighted to say that we've now been joined by Labour's Minister for London, Keith Hill. Good morning.
Good morning.
I suspect this is the least popular, can Camera 2 see that? The least popular newspaper in Labour circles this morning. I mean, it's got it in one, hasn't it? It's the unfulfilled agenda. Hospitals, schools, transport. What have you done since '97?
What have we done since '97? We've invested massively in health, in education, in the transport system, and in fighting crime. On all of those, we're now looking at levels of investment such as we've never seen for a generation. And of
Does
course,
it depress you, though, despite that, that so many people just couldn't be bothered? There's no enthusiasm for you. You've won, but it's not like '97.
I don't think it's like that at all. I think the reality is that people had dinned into them that there was going to be a landslide. They saw the opinion polls and they thought to themselves, Labour's got it in the bag. Why turn out to vote? And I have to say the other thing is, of course, it's extremely difficult to motivate people when they're contented. What actually people generally vote on is to throw the scoundrels out. But when they know that living standards are improving, when people are going back into jobs, we put 250,000 jobs back into the London economy over the last 4 years, they say to themselves, well, they're doing well, we'll stick with them, and I think that's what happened in this election yesterday.
Was contentment your biggest enemy, Steve?
I do think that when people are, generally speaking, more prosperous, when more people are in work, it's certainly an uphill struggle for the opposition. That's quite right. Of course, there's real irony about what Keith says, which is the government has promised massive new investment. Ironically, over the last 4 years, it's spent less than the previous government did, and that's the real irony. That I never thought anybody could spend less on transport in London than the Tories did, and Labour went ahead and proved me wrong. They spent less than we did, but they made a lot of promises about the future. And I think the real thing is not just that Labour won, but that we were not in a position to take this election from them. I don't think Labour's record in London was particularly good, although naturally I think Keith distinguished himself, as he always does, a great man, a great friend of mine. But the reality is it was ours to take, and we didn't take it, against a background of a crumbling tube, falling investment, less money spent than actually the Tories were spending. We didn't take the challenge. That's why it's so important for us today to seize the opportunity of William Hague's challenge to us, in effect, and really rethink where we're coming from.
Quick right of reply, Keith?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we put £1.6 billion more into London Underground than was scheduled by the Conservatives. We've initiated the £60 million London Bus Initiative. We've completed the Docklands Light Railway extension, the Jubilee Line extension, the Croydon Tramway. We've given the authorisation to the Crossrail project, and we are about, of course, to complete on the the historic public-private partnership on the London Underground, which will see £13 billion of modernisation in London's Underground, and the first results of that are going to be seen in the course of this year.
Simon, you cast yourself, as indeed does your friend and colleague Charles Kennedy, as the real effective opposition. How are you going to make Keith and his party in government actually deliver those promises and those demands that Steve Norris has just talked about?
Well, I think by reflecting what the public appear to be saying over the past few weeks. I think the public were saying the infrastructure is not up to the job. We don't have the health service that can cope. As yet, the education service is stretched and struggling. The transport service is not delivering for Londoners or for other people. We don't have enough police. Now, the Tories went to the election saying, cut taxes, better public services. Nobody believed that. We went honestly saying we think it may cost some of you a bit more. So we will be pushing, as we did in the last Parliament, and I think the Labour government know that, I don't think there was a culture of contentment, but they went to the election saying, some done, more to do. If they don't do the more, they will be in trouble. Our job is to put that pressure on, and we can do it more credibly than the Tories in the present state of the Tory party.
Really briefly, I've got 15 seconds left. Do you fear the Liberal Democrats more than you fear the Tories?
We are primed to deal with both challenges, but I have to say the Liberals have done very well, and of course the Conservatives are about to go into a very serious period of self-analysis.
There we have to leave it.
We will deliver in the meantime.
We'll keep watching for that as well. All of you, thank you very much indeed. This has been election 2001. Labour still dominate the capital with almost 3 times as many seats as the Tories and the Liberal Democrats put together. The Lib Dems strengthened their showing. The Tories won 3 seats from Labour in Essex, but it wasn't enough to stop William Hague quitting. Here's what he and the other 2 main party leaders had to say.
I believe it's vital that the party be given the chance to choose a leader who can build on my work, but also take new initiatives and hopefully command a larger personal following in the country. And I've therefore decided to step down as leader of the Conservative Party when a successor can be elected in the coming months.
It has been a really fantastic campaign to lead, and I think it has been a fantastic victory. But I think it's a victory that puts down a marker that we are the party of the future, and that this decade can see us as part of the governance of our country.
Those expectations are there. We have to meet them. We have to work patiently, clearly, calmly, with determination and vigour to serve the people of this country. It's a privilege and an honour that they have bestowed upon us. Let us live up to it now.
The votes have also been cast in 11 local councils. The results are due a little later in the morning. We'll have details at 12:20 and in London today at 1 o'clock, plus further reaction to the general election results. We'll also have all of the news and sport that's going on as well on this special day in London tonight at 6. Join us for that. Until then, a very good morning to you.
Introducing the original, the one and only Sean Connery as Bond.
Who are you?
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
Right, now pay attention. He's 007 7 times.
Remarkable.
See all 7 films over 7 weeks.
You're joking.
Starting with Dr. No.
This is the big one, 007. The whole thing's so fantastic, it just could be true.
Bond.
The Connery season
Begins Wednesday at 8.
ITV.
ITV Election 2001 continues next with further analysis and comment on last night's results.
At Asda, our low prices just keep getting lower and lower. And because we're always rolling back prices throughout the store, it means whenever you shop, you'll always get low prices. That's Asda price.
New softer, very non-bio.
In Melbourne's all-inclusive sale, every kitchen includes an integrated dishwasher, absolutely free. For your nearest showroom, call 0800 413 413. Wherever you are, get involved in a Mills & Boon romance. You'll be surprised where it can take you. Now for a limited time, only $1.99 while stocks last. Mills & Boon.
Jim Proctor is about to retire.
2 weeks to ready yourselves for a night to remember.
About to hand it all to his nephew.
Long live the king.
About to make the biggest mistake of his life.
If you're willing to help me, I can help you.
I don't trust him.
Something I wanted to say.
You don't trust him because you want his job.
I am going to marry Proctor.
I don't think you love him.
Where is Cat?
Life is for us.
The Glass, Sunday, 8:50 ITV.
Now, with more election analysis, here's Jonathan Dimbleby.
Welcome back to election 2001. William Hague is to step down as Tory leader following another catastrophic election defeat for his party. Tony Blair won an unprecedented second landslide victory, although his majority was slightly reduced. The Liberal Democrats gained MPs, mostly from the Tories. The statistic that was bad news for all the politicians was the turnout, a new low of less than 60%. So, with 634 seats declared, this is how the parties stand so far this morning. Labour are on 413 seats, the Conservatives have 164, the Liberal Democrats are on 47, and the other parties are on 10. Of course, that doesn't include the seats in Northern Ireland, which won't be counted until later. So that should give Labour a majority of 167. With a roundup now of all the main events, here's Tom Bradley.
William Hague faced this morning something he must long have considered inevitable. His defeat was comprehensive, and he didn't hesitate.
I believe it's vital that the party be given the chance to choose a leader who can build on my work, but also take new initiatives and hopefully command a larger personal following in the country. And I've therefore decided to step down as leader of the Conservative Party when a successor can be elected in the coming months.
It will take a number of weeks to elect a new leader to replace him, and Mr. Hague said he would stay on to see through that process. Michael Portillo is probably the front runner, but the outcome is far from certain. By the time they were on their way back to London, the Blairs looked as if they were finally able to relax after so many weeks of striving not to take anything for granted. Until dawn, the mood remained serious. Labour's leaders may have written themselves into the record books, but they were determined to look like members of the natural party of government conducting business as usual. But at the Labour Party's media headquarters, it began to look like what it really was, an achievement more remarkable in many ways than the victory 4 years ago.
For 100 years, we've been in government for short periods of time, but never won a full, successive second term of office. Now we have. But we have done so because at long last in this country, we've united the politics of ambition for yourself and your family and compassion and decency and obligation to others less fortunate than yourself.
Earlier, once victory had become inevitable, Mr. Blair had hugged his family and thanked all those closest to him. But most emotional of all last night was the man he'd expelled from the cabinet twice, for whom re-election, even in a safe seat, had become a personal crusade.
They underestimated me because I am a fighter and not a quitter.
But it wasn't just Labour supporters who were celebrating this morning. The Liberal Democrats held on to their seats and made new gains.
Testing the microphones. Did I pass the audition? Right, well, it's been an absolutely tremendous result for the Liberal Democrats this election. I think we comprehensively laid to rest the talk that what took place 4 years ago was a one-off event, could never be repeated. It was the high-water mark for the party.
The Blairs are now back where they began almost a month ago. The Prime Minister was smiling, but all night he looked like a man who'd made history, but was still very anxious to make certain of his place in it. Tom Bradley, ITV Election 2001.
What a moral tale about politics. Joy at number 10 and William Hague departing. John, I was struck by what he said very poignantly, it seemed to me. Hopefully someone who can command a larger personal following in the country. The pain suddenly out.
Yes, and an admission that there was a Hague factor, that the opinion polls were showing that he was very, very low down in terms of has he got the qualities to be Prime Minister. But what a savage trade this is, isn't it? 4 years ago, he was reluctant to become leader. He didn't think that he was ready, but the party said, you are the man. He'd wanted to be Prime Minister since he was, what, 16? We heard that famous speech with Margaret Thatcher, and now at the age of 40, his political career is effectively over. Now, there is a strong element there of personal tragedy.
There absolutely is, and already, politics being what it is, the bookies are offering odds on who's going to take over. They have a complicated process for selection. Who are the key people in your judgment who are going to be in there?
It is a complicated process. Michael Portillo must be right up there as the obvious favourite.
Assuming he wants it.
Well, it's difficult for him to walk away from it. What happens is that the Tory MPs get together and they get the list by a series of ballots, get the list down to 2, and those 2 are then put to the party leadership. So it's a question, I suppose, who will the 2 be? Michael Portillo, Anne Widdecombe, Ian Duncan-Smith. The list is quite a long one once you've dealt with Michael Portillo.
We shall be following this an awful lot more closely as we go along. Now we can go to Downing Street, where I can see Joe Andrews and also at Tory party headquarters, Lauren Taylor. Joe, first of all, have you got news for us on when you expect the reshuffle to be announced? We've been half saying who's likely to go here and there. Do you know when we might hear?
Well, first things first, Jonathan. He has to go to the palace to see the Queen. You can see the microphone here. We are expecting him to do that this morning for the simple reason that we're told that the Queen has a horse running in the Oaks this afternoon, and we know that she'd like to see that. So we're expecting Tony Blair to come out here, go to the palace, perhaps come back and address us after that. This morning we've seen all his staff come back up Downing Street, Alistair Campbell, Hilary Kaufman, Angie Hunter, all of them with broad smiles on their faces. Alistair Campbell raised a very good-natured boo here when he wouldn't tell us what his new job is. But no doubt he and the Prime Minister and all the Prime Minister's staff are in there working on the new cabinet. We should get to hear what it is later today.
Joe, you talked about his new job. He's actually ceasing to be in the same role as Press Secretary, isn't he?
Yes, that's what we think, or that's what we were told before the election. We don't know what the precise title is, but we do know that he wants to move slightly back from what he was doing, dealing with the press every day, and to come slightly closer to managing that office for the Prime Minister.
Joe, thank you. And now Conservative Party headquarters, Lauren Taylor. Lauren, we touched on the mood earlier. Have you picked up anything more since then?
Yes, I have, and I've been speaking to party workers here who say they're still completely stunned. I think throughout Mr Hague was so buoyant that I don't quite think that they expected that this could happen or that it could happen this quickly, especially as senior Tories had seemed to be suggesting that it might be preferable for him to stay on. Now, he actually acknowledged himself that he'd been urged to stay on, but I think he also made it clear that he felt that the 2 months or so that it will take for that leadership contest will be enough for the ground to settle.
And is it right that he made the decision, we think, quite clearly sometime before, that if it was a disaster, there would be no question that he would go?
Certainly what his staff are saying here is that this was something that he'd planned. If it was this kind of result, it was a decision that he had already made. What they've also incidentally been saying is that he has no intention of staying on in frontline politics, so that if a new leader is elected, he actually doesn't want to be part of the shadow cabinet, be on the front benches. He very much wants to go back to the back benches. And I think possibly that was part of what stunned the staff so much. But at the moment it's still shell-shocked here, and a whole new world for William Hague once the new leader is elected, back on the back benches.
Lauren, thank you very much. We've been talking about one of the key things to emerge from this election result is the low turnout. Dermot can tell us more about that. Virtually, Dermot Murhan.
Well, yes, Jonathan, turnout has been tumbling over the decades. It seems fewer and fewer of us are bothering to go down to the polling booths and put our ballot papers into one of these, or indeed send them in by post. Let's start with 1950. Clement Attlee against Winston Churchill seemed to catch the imagination of the electorate. 84% of eligible voters voted in that one. Moving on, nearly 30 years to 1979, Margaret Thatcher's first victory, 76%, 3/4 of the electorate got involved in that one. Let's look at Tony Blair's first victory in 1997. You see the trend falling. It continues to come down to 71.4% in 1997. Now, here's the real dramatic fall to this time round. in just 4 years, we have a fall now to 59.2%, the lowest turnout since the khaki election of 1918. And a real question for all politicians, how to re-engage the voters. It seems that just about 1 in 4 of eligible voters voted for Tony Blair and the Labour Party.
There we are, following the proceedings in analytical terms throughout the night and into the morning. Colin Rallings is in our results centre. Colin, the turnout question, can you illuminate that a little bit more for us, what's been going on?
Well, really, today, Jonathan, we've reached the situation, if you walk down the street and meet 10 people, 2.5 of them will have voted Labour, and 4 of them won't have voted at all. So, although Labour has got this massive majority again, a landslide victory, many more MPs than all the other parties put together, the fact of the matter is that a minority, and only a small minority of that of the population, have actually positively voted for them.
Which is a very depressing thing if you're a politician. Bob Worcester from Murray, can you give us any more on the basis of what the polls have been telling you as to why this should happen?
There are 4 groups, Jonathan, that we want to look at. The first is Old Labour, in Old Labour's seats. And they will not have affected the outcome in terms of seats, but they will have depressed the turnout because they are the people who had to vote Labour in 1997. They'd been in the wilderness for 17 years, and they'd hoped for a Labour government. They're disappointed they didn't get one, and they gave them no incentive to vote. The shy Tories, who voted for the Conservative Party in 1992, but stayed home, over 2 million of them, in 1997. Did William Hague give them a reason to come out? No, he didn't, in their view. The new Labour idealists, I think, probably did vote, but some of them, thinking that Tony Blair would finish the party at South Bank and walk across the Thames, and all the nation's problems would be solved within a month. They were disappointed, and I think some of them voted Liberal Democrat. So those, I think, are the 3 key reasons, 3 key groups, and the 4th, of course, are young people. Only 9% of young people voted.
Very depressing sound, that, for politicians. Bob Worcester, thank you very much, and of course Colin Rallings as well. John, only 9% of young people voted. It's going to be very important for the politicians to deal with this at a general level, but I guess the winning party, the Labour government, is going to concentrate on the fact that there was this massive win in Parliament.
Yes, we shouldn't really get too tied up with this argument about the turnout. It's the sort of thing that goes on election night. Politicians in general will worry about it, but in practice, the raw politics is absolutely clear. Tony Blair in this enormously strong position. It is now his party and his call on a whole series of issues.
Let's now have an election update from Mary Nightingale in the Results Centre. Mary.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, after Labour's historic win, the speculation's beginning over who will be in Tony Blair's new cabinet. The most high-profile change is expected to be David Blunkett, taking over as Home Secretary. His job of education could go to Estelle Morris, who held on to her marginal Birmingham Yardley seat. John Prescott is set to stay as Deputy Prime Minister, but may lose his Environment and Transport Department. Well, as Tony Blair thinks about his reshuffle, the Tories have to begin the process of finding a new leader. One firm of bookies has already installed Michael Portillo as favourite for the job, but Ian Duncan Smith and Kenneth Clarke are close behind. In Scotland, it was the Scottish nationalists who were the biggest losers. They failed to gain any seats and lost Galloway and Upper Nithsdale to the Tories. The Conservatives also had hopes of winning back Edinburgh Pentlands, Sir Malcolm Rifkin's old seat. But as in much of the rest of Scotland, the Labour vote stayed firm. Labour will also be pleased with their performance in Wales, where they kept their total of 34 seats. It had been thought the nationalists, Plaid Cymru, would make inroads into the Labour heartlands, but they managed just one gain in Carmarthen East, and that was cancelled out by the loss of Ynys Môn back to Labour. The Tories were once again left without any MPs in Wales. One of the night's most extraordinary results was in Wyre Forest, where the sitting Labour MP was ousted by an independent. Dr. Richard Taylor stood on the sole issue of saving Kidderminster Hospital from being downgraded. He clearly touched a chord with the voters, winning with a massive 17,000 majority.
And the way I view this is a tremendous reaction from the people against a very powerful government, against a very powerful political system that overrides the will of the people.
The British National Party is claiming its own victory after a strong showing in Oldham, scene of the recent riots. They received over 11,500 votes in the town's 2 seats. The party's candidates wore gags at the count in protest at the decision not to allow any speeches in case they provoked further unrest. And finally, the man in the white suit, Martin Bell, has failed to make a return to Parliament. The former war correspondent contested the seat of Brentford and Ongar in Essex after fears that the local Conservative Party had been infiltrated. Despite his defeat, Mr Bell did manage to make a sizable dent in Tory Eric Pickle's majority. And that's all the election news for now. Jonathan.
Thanks, Mary. So a massive victory for the Conservatives, catastrophe for the Tories. In a moment, I'll be talking to Lord Tebbit about William Hague's resignation and what the party should do next. And we'll be looking at what Tony Blair will do in his reshuffle. That's after the break.
With Sea France and get some of the lowest fares from Dover to Calais? Yes, you can. Book now on 08705 711 711 or visit seafrance.com and save £5. See the difference with Sea France.
If only it was less creased. I can wear mine straight from the line.
I'll stay put, so they won't see the creases.
Creases? What creases?
New Downy from Lenore, for less creases after the wash and even while wearing.
Downy, my clothes, only better.
Chicago Town deep dish pizzas. These guys are so versatile. You can cook them in the oven or in the microwave in just 3 minutes. And because they're individual, you can have them as a snack on the run or as a main meal. With fries, jacket potatoes, salad, beans, ice cream, apple, celery, walnuts, grapes, bananas. Are you tempted? Are you? Go a little thin on top. The Chicago Town pizza isn't. Its unique base means the filling stays deep and dishy right to the edge. Chicago Town Pizza, America's best-selling frozen pizza.
In Moburn's all-inclusive sale, every kitchen includes an integrated dishwasher, absolutely free. For your nearest showroom, call 0800 413 413.
Welcome back to Election 2001, where we'll be looking at all the implications of Tony Blair's second historic victory. So, safely back in number 10, what next for him? One of the first things, of course, we're expecting is the cabinet reshuffle. I think, Dermot, you can give us a virtual reshuffle, can't you?
For another term, attention now will be on who will be called in through this door at number 10 and given what job by Tony Blair. Well, one man we don't expect to be moving jobs is Gordon Brown, the Iron Chancellor. We expect to remain firmly married to Prudence at the Treasury, but we do expect the current Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, to be on the move. It's thought when he leaves number 10 after the reshuffle, it could be as Cabinet Office Minister, with, believe it or not, a brief to start looking ahead to the next general election already. Now, there had been some speculation over the future of Robin Cook, but the wise money seems to be on him staying on, at least for the time being. Another minister talking about moving in recent months is David Blunkett. He's hotly tipped to be the next Home Secretary, and that could mean a straight swap of ministries with the current man in charge at the Home Office, Jack Straw. Mr. Straw to be Education Secretary, perhaps, or to take over at the Department of Trade and Industry. And what now for one of Tony Blair's closest allies, the Lord Chancellor, Lord Irvine, Derry Irvine? Well, he's tipped to be the next leader of the House of Lords. All in all, it could be a busy time for ministers coming in and out of this famous black door.
There we are, a speculative shuffle. John, the interesting thing about that is how many of the big figures are still going to be in there, it appears.
It is. It's very unusual, but if you go through the names, you can see why. As Chancellor, Gordon Brown really can't do anything else. He's so important in terms of Labour's approach to the economy that to move him, say, to the Foreign Office is where classically Chancellors go not much gain as far as Mr. Blair is concerned. Robin Cook, it's interesting because people don't rate him very highly in the country at large, but Mr. Blair does, and I've heard him talk at great length about how useful it is at European councils, for example, to leave Robin Cook in the chair because he can handle the detail.
Lovely, we'll come back to some more of that. And then there's William Hague's leadership of the Conservatives. It lasted 4 years. He took on the job when his party was at an extreme low, and he failed to lift them enough to feel that he had a future. One of the questions that his party has to face now, how much was it the man, how much was it his policies that were the problem? On this, here's Nicholas Owen.
With his rarely heard wife Fionn beside him, William Hague arriving last night for his own election result in North Yorkshire. The question inevitable.
Mr. Hague, do you intend to continue as party leader?
Comment later. Thank you very much.
When the answer came later, it would be just before 8 o'clock this morning, it was a surprise that he decided not to go on after only 4 years in the job. His acceptance speech in his beloved Richmond constituency was one of the few admissions he's ever had to make of failure.
There is no doubt that the results tonight across the country are deeply disappointing for my party. And I feel for the candidates and the activists and supporters in other constituencies who have worked so hard for so little reward this evening.
A disaster then for Mr. Hague himself and for the Conservatives. One of the party's elder statesmen, though, thinks only he could have taken the Tories from the low point they found themselves after the last election.
He'd got a tiny parliamentary party, and unlike Tony Blair when he took over, he quite clearly wasn't going to be Prime Minister within 18 months. It got a long haul with a totally demoralized army and very few resources. And I think you have to measure his performance against that background. And in many ways, in my view, he's been outstandingly successful, starting from where he did.
But one of Mr. Hague's biggest problems was that he was never popular with the general public. In a recent Mori poll, just 12% of people described him as a capable leader. Only 5% described him as having sound judgment, 58% described him as not in touch, and less than a quarter, 23% of those questioned agreed William Hague is ready to be Prime Minister. Even with Fionn in support, Mr. Hague's personal image has never impressed most of the electorate, and that is something a Labour leader who never made it to 10 Downing Street knows a bit about.
Well, to some extent, I'm bound to sympathise with balding young men who lead parties in opposition as a kind of, I suppose, an unofficial trade union of people in that situation.
Back in Yorkshire, Mr. Hague's Auntie Marjorie, how does her nephew cope with all the brickbats that have come his way?
I just don't know, but I think it does upset we, the family, more than it ever upsets him. I think he just has this ability to get on with what he is doing. He's got very focused on what he's doing, and it just, you know, runs off his back like water off a duck's back.
Do you think it's possible he may one day, though, be prepared to give up politics, do you think, and go and do other things?
Well, one never knows, but I would think possibly, and it could possibly become quite a big name in industry, because he is business trained.
But William Hague desperately wanted to climb to the summit of politics, to become Prime Minister. Still only 40, that's been denied him. Nicholas Owen, ITV, Election 2001.
Now, to take us a little bit further into some interpretation and understanding of Mr. Hague's decision, joined by party grandee, Lord Tebbit. Doesn't like being called a grandee, really. Lord Tebbit, did it take you by surprise, his decision to go?
A little, but not altogether. I think it's a pity. I think that he has done a great deal in the last few years. I think he made some mistakes. Obviously, if he hadn't made some, he would have done better.
What do you think now happens? You say it's a pity that the party's left now saying to itself, how on earth do we pick up these pieces, isn't it?
Well, I don't think that's too difficult, actually. After all, if you look around what happened in the countryside, you see one or two spectacular results. Andrew Rossendale, for example, at Romford.
Who was on the right of the party, of course, and a very, very anti-European character.
But more important than that, Andrew perceived that in the last 4 years, the traditional Labour voter, let's call him a bus driver married with 3 children, has done very badly indeed. That a lot of traditional Tory voters in the leafy suburbs have done extremely well still.
But if that's all,
farming it.
Sorry, if that's all true, why on earth weren't people pouring into the polling booth to support the party which had focused its campaign essentially on Europe and on tax cuts?
Well, for 2 or 3 reasons. One reason is that the middle classes didn't really feel in need of tax cuts because many of them have had very substantial pay rises. And the 40% rate was the key thing for them. So in that sense, it was the economy stupid, as in Clinton's re-election. I think the other thing is that it takes a long time for a traditional Labour voter to desert the Labour Party, particularly when it is successful, in inverted commas. Now, I think the other snag was that the Tories didn't connect the euro and the NHS. As you know, enter the euro and it's bankers in Frankfurt who will dictate the total of public spending in the United Kingdom. So those 2 things are very important.
Do you think whoever it is who takes over has got to be someone who will fight with passion against ever joining a single currency? Is that your position?
Well, I think one has to set out those things which are unchanging and those things which are changing in the equation. For example, you can change the equation on the economics to some extent. The Prime Minister's doing it now by helping to engineer a massive devaluation.
Yes.
First time we've ever had a Prime Minister organise a devaluation of his own currency.
I don't want to cut you off,
the
but
constitutional ones are unchanging. And it was a chap in Romford Street Market who explained the constitutional issue to me. And he said, well, Norm, this euro business, as far as I'm concerned, whoever's got control of your money has got you by the vitals. He didn't say vitals, but the message was clear.
Who for you is the person who should lead the party into the campaign that you want to see forward?
I don't think that would be appropriate for me to say at this stage, because it's not only about the euro. It's about someone who has got the passion to set out how one could reform the health service to make sure that the money which is poured in at the top actually gets down to the bottom, to the operating hospitals, and the same with education. These are key issues which we didn't deal with in sufficient detail.
That was the mistake that you were referring to,
well,
William Hague.
It was something which we didn't do, which we should have done.
I'm going to bring in John Sargent now, as commenting on what you've heard, John. I mean, a wider view might be that if they follow Lord Tebbutt's advice, they will be plunged into even deeper trouble.
It's a question of how many of these issues that Norman talks about can be resolved with a new leader, and whether or not they've been casual about this whole question of whether you can have a leadership which might then be upset again by a referendum on the single currency. I think that's what will worry people within the Conservative Party. Can you just go on doing this? John Major walks away, William Hague walks away. How much talent is there that you can just simply use up at that kind of rate?
What you can't
Thank you, John.
is a
I'm
Tory
sorry.
party leader who would campaign for a yes vote alongside Tony Blair.
Thank you very much, Lord Tebbutt, for joining us. No more time. We'll be back very soon with all the big stories, so stay with us here on ITV. We'll be back with full election coverage at 12 o'clock. And I promise you, we won't let you miss a thing. See you soon.
Her friend.
Her cousin.
Her nanny.
Her bridesmaid.
Her therapist.
Her employer.
Her confidant.
Her lover.
Her lover. The woman you thought you knew, by the people who really did.
Diana, Story of a Princess, Sunday 9:50 ITV.
Need more space in your place?
It would be nice to have somewhere to hang my clothes instead of on the back of a door.
Turn your home into a hot property.
Who will add the greatest value and win? And which design tricks do they have up their sleeves?
Wow.
Carol Vorderman's Better Homes, Monday 8:30 ITV.
Election aside, life continues next on This Morning with entertainer Lionel Blair and natural remedy guru Jan de Vries.